The smell hits you long before the panic does. It is thick, oily, and bizarrely domestic, a pungent, heavy aroma of crushed garlic mixed violently with the sharp, acidic tang of horseradish and cheap industrial mustard. It doesn't smell like a weapon of mass extermination. It smells like your grandmother's kitchen just before Sunday dinner. You are standing in the freezing, waterlogged mud of the Ypres salient, shivering violently in a wet wool uniform. You breathe in deeply, your exhausted lungs desperate for any available oxygen in this stagnant, corpse-lined ditch. That deep breath is your death sentence. Within 30 seconds, the phantom garlic turns into liquid fire. The delicate mucous membranes lining your trachea and bronchi are not being merely irritated by a harsh smoke. They are being fundamentally dissolved on a cellular level. You feel the instant aggressive tickle in the back of your throat that rapidly explodes into a violent, racking, uncontrollable cough. The spasm tears at your bruised ribcage, forcing you to double over into the filthy water at your feet. Your eyes, highly sensitive and constantly coated in a thin layer of moisture, are the first true casualties. You feel a sudden, abrasive sensation, exactly like a handful of hot, coarse sand being thrown violently directly into your open sockets. The translucent cornea immediately begins to cloud over, swelling aggressively and turning a sickly, opaque gray as the heavy, oily vapor begins to chemically fuse the intricate, fragile layers of your ocular tissue together. You are going blind, and the friction of your own eyelids feels like sandpaper dragging across raw nerve endings. You claw frantically at your own face, digging your fingernails into your dirt-caked cheeks, but you aren't fighting an enemy soldier you can stab or shoot. You are fighting the very air itself. You are feeling the exact, precise moment when industrial chemistry overpowers human biology. This is not a quick, merciful kinetic wound. This is not a high-velocity bullet severing a vital artery. This is a descent into a specific synthesized hell that the medical mind of previous centuries could never have imagined. But as the stinging, heavy yellow-green cloud begins to settle heavily into the low points of the trench, clinging permanently to the damp wool of your uniform and the leather of your boots, you must ask yourself a terrifying question. Why is the skin on the back of your neck starting to bubble where the heavy cloth is wet with your own sweat? The immediate burning in your throat is merely the preamble. The real nightmare hasn't even touched your DNA yet. What invisible biological mechanism is beginning on your very epidermis? Welcome to the year 1915. You are no longer a soldier with a name and a family. You are a biological specimen trapped inside the first great industrial grinder. The system operating here is weaponized science, an unholy, highly efficient alliance between the pristine university laboratory and the brutal, soot-stained factory floor. The generals and the elite chemists back in Berlin and London are playing a godlike game of attrition, viewing your fragile respiratory system not as a vital human organ, but as a vast, unprotected testing ground for experimental alkylating agents. With the heavy, suffocating shadow of global war and nuclear escalation hanging over the news cycles of our modern world, we have conveniently sanitized the past. We have forgotten the terror anatomic, the visceral, rotting reality that chemical weapons cause in the human body. If you have the iron stomach required to keep descending into this toxic pit with me, hit the like button now. It is the absolute price of admission to the morgue. Only the brave survive the vapor of 1915, and only those willing to look at the infected wound can truly understand the horror of modern warfare. This gas, officially designated bis 2-chlorophyll sulfide and nicknamed Yellow Cross or mustard gas, is not designed to be a rapid killer. That is not its industrial, mathematical purpose. Its true purpose is systemic paralysis. It is a vesicant, a highly aggressive blistering agent, specifically engineered to completely clog the enemy field hospitals with tens of thousands of screaming, permanently disabled wounded, paralyzing an entire army's logistical ability to move or fight. The German chemist Fritz Haber looked at a physiological map of your lungs, noted the extreme vulnerability of the alveolar sacs, and mathematically decided that your cellular structure needed to be chemically rewritten. The delivery mechanism is the first psychological torture. There is no massive, deafening explosion to warn you to take cover. The artillery shells containing the liquid agent land in the soft mud with a dull, hollow plop. They crack open quietly, and the liquid rapidly vaporizes into the freezing wind. Hours later, the doctor finally approaches you in the chaotic, overstuffed triage tent. Look at his face. He is not wearing a crisp, clean white medical coat. He is wearing an officer's heavy wool tunic stained with the blood of 50 men. Over his head, he wears a terrifying, primitive canvas sack early gas mask. Two perfectly round glass eyes stare back at you, cold, unblinking, and dead. He smells overwhelmingly of stale urine, a common, desperate chemical antidote used by the men in the trenches to neutralize chlorine gas when proper masks were entirely unavailable. You look at him through your swollen, weeping, half-blind eyes, and you think he possesses a cure. You believe he has a magical, scientific antidote in his leather satchel to permanently extinguish the raging chemical fire inside your chest cavity. You are entirely, tragically wrong. The treatment he is about to administer is not a healing remedy. It is a brutal, primitive, agonizingly painful gamble that will likely cause your death long before the toxic gas finishes its work. And even if you miraculously survive his physical intervention, the absolute worst terror of the mustard gas hasn't even begun to systematically attack your circulatory system. The biological bomb has a delayed fuse. Act 3, the ritual of horror, the anatomical blistering. Let's brutally dissect the microscopic mechanics of your demise. Mustard gas is an oil-based, highly lipophilic vesicant. This means it loves fat, and it is a master of total infiltration. It passes through thick, wet wool uniforms, canvas webbing, and heavy leather combat boots with shocking, effortless ease. It actively seeks out moisture. It loves humidity. The sweating armpit, the damp groin, the creases of the neck, and the soft, vulnerable skin behind your knees are its primary, highly receptive targets. This is the silent ritual. It occurs directly on your skin, technically and coldly known in the laboratory as alkylation. The heavy mustard molecule reacts violently with the normal water present in your bodily tissues, instantly and aggressively releasing massive amounts of toxic, highly concentrated hydrochloric acid directly into your cellular matrix. But it does not stop at the surface. More insidiously, it penetrates deep into the very nucleus of your cells and begins to physically cross-link the strands of your DNA. It acts exactly like a microscopic wrench thrown into a high-speed engine. Your genetic code is being violently rewritten to order immediate, catastrophic cell death. This is forced apoptosis. Your body begins a systematic, unstoppable biological suicide. The cruelty of mustard gas is its delay. For the first 2 to 6 hours after the garlic smell fades, you feel almost nothing. You think you survived the attack. You think the wind blew the danger away. This is the biological head fake. You sit in the trench, eating your rations, completely unaware that your DNA is currently tearing itself apart. Then the erythema begins. Your skin turns a furious, burning, angry red, exactly like severe radiation sickness or a catastrophic sunburn. First come the small, innocent-looking vesicles. Clear, fluid-filled bubbles erupt rapidly across your chest, your neck, and the sensitive skin of your inner thighs. They look almost manageable. You delude yourself into thinking the skin can naturally heal. But then, the true horror manifests. The small, isolated bubbles aggressively fuse together. They grow exponentially. By tomorrow morning, your entire back, your torso, and your legs will be a single, massive, weeping, hemorrhagic blister where the entire top layer of your epidermis has completely and permanently detached from the underlying vascular dermis. The pain is a constant, white-hot, blinding light that never flickers. Every time you shift your weight on the canvas cot, the massive blisters tear open, leaking a sticky, yellow, highly infectious serous fluid onto the filthy blankets. Now, stop looking at your melting skin and listen. The horrific noise echoing through the massive canvas tent is the collective wet, gurgling sound of 100 men literally drowning in their own bodily fluids. The heavy gas you breathed in hours ago has turned your lower respiratory tract into a chemical battleground. The hydrochloric acid has completely dissolved the fragile, microscopic capillary walls inside your alveoli, the tiny sacs where oxygen enters your blood. Your body, desperately and blindly trying to dilute the burning acid, dumps gallons of your own blood plasma and fluid directly into the newly emptied air spaces. This is severe pulmonary edema. The oxygen you inhale cannot cross the thick, rising fluid barrier. You are clinically, mechanically drowning, but your feet are resting on dry land. The sensation of suffocation is absolute. You are gasping like a fish pulled onto the deck of a boat, your chest heaving violently, but no oxygen reaches your starving brain. The doctor in the terrifying canvas mask looks down at your clouded, fused, weeping eyes. He knows perfectly well that if he does not act with extreme physical aggression, you will be dead within hours, your blood turning a thick, toxic black from a total lack of oxygen. He reaches into his heavy leather medical satchel for a long, curved, unsterilized iron instrument. He does not bring a soothing medicine bottle. He brings a crude tool for mechanical debridement. He is about to begin the agonizing procedure of cleansing your ruined lungs, a brutal physical intervention that makes the freezing, rat-infested trench mud feel like a comforting, safe womb. What exactly do the medical officers of 1915 do with a soldier whose lungs are entirely filled with their own dissolving acidic tissue? The answer lies in a procedure so brutally invasive, it borderlines on a live autopsy while you are still fully conscious. This is the ultimate, crushing moment of betrayal. You dragged your melting, blistering body through miles of communication trenches because you truly believed the rear echelon field hospital was a safe sanctuary. You believed the men with the red crosses on their arms possessed the science to save you. It is merely the second station of your biological collapse. There are no highly advanced, sterile surgical instruments here. There is no modern ventilator to breathe for you. There is only terrifying speed, overwhelming numbers of dying men, and the desperate, bloody necessity of the industrial grinder. The exhausted doctor slaps a filthy cloth rag soaked in cheap, harsh chloroform over your face, but it is nowhere near enough to truly put you under. The chemical only serves to further irritate your already ruined trachea. You are trapped in a horrifying twilight state of physical paralysis and absolute, wide-awake terror. He takes a long, rough-edged, semi-flexible rubber and iron catheter and jams it violently down your throat, bypassing your gag reflex entirely. You feel the cold iron tool scraping harshly against the raw, completely dissolved mucous membranes of your esophagus and windpipe. You gag, producing a wet, choking, agonizing sound as he attaches a primitive suction device and begins to aggressively pump. He is trying to mechanically drain the thick, bloody plasma and the sloughing, dead cellular tissue directly from your lungs. But every single pull of the harsh vacuum pump violently tears at the already severely weakened paper-thin tissue of your respiratory tract. He is literally sucking the lining of your lungs out through a tube. If you appreciate this level of unapologetic historical grime, the visceral, microscopic truth that the sanitized National Archives and the polite history books desperately wanted to hide, subscribe to the channel now. I am digging through these toxic, forgotten graves so you don't have to. We are just scratching the corroded surface of the industrial grinder's capabilities for human destruction. Don't let me navigate this sprawling, coughing charnel house alone. The real absolute betrayer in this scenario isn't the doctor's saw blade sharp iron catheter. The real betrayer is the biological fact that the mustard gas molecule stays inside your system long after the smell of garlic fades. It has a deeply hidden, latent consequence that the doctors of 1915 do not even understand yet. Let us imagine a miracle occurs. You survive the brutal, tearing, coughing fits. You survive the horrific mechanical pumping of your ruined lungs. You endure the agonizing, weeks-long torture of your skin, sloughing off in great, wet, yellow sheets, requiring daily, agonizing bandage changes that strip away new flesh. By some absolute miracle of your youthful constitution, your vital signs stabilize. You are loaded onto a crowded, rocking hospital train and transported back to a permanent, clean brick hospital in London. The massive, weeping blisters slowly begin to turn into thick, black, hardened scabs. You look out the window at the peaceful English countryside. You think you are finally safe. The war is over for you. A week later, you are sitting in a clean white bed, and you begin to bleed spontaneously from your gums and your nose. Massive dark purple bruises begin to form under your skin without any physical impact or trauma. You feel a sudden, crushing weakness in your bones. Within hours, you develop a raging 105-degree fever that seems to literally boil the cerebral fluid in your brain. You begin to hallucinate. The mustard gas molecules that did not immediately react with your cellular water or your skin DNA have successfully and quietly migrated deep into the core of your skeleton, directly into your bone marrow. This is leukopenia, also known as severe myelosuppression. The industrial weaponized chemistry has systemically and ruthlessly slaughtered your bone marrow's fundamental ability to produce white blood cells. Your entire immune system has been quietly dissolved from the inside out over the last 14 days. You have absolutely zero biological defenses left. The incredibly common, everyday bacteria sitting harmlessly on your own skin or floating invisibly in the very hospital air you are breathing flood massively into your completely defenseless bloodstream. You die not from the toxic gas directly, but from an overwhelming systemic sepsis. Your body becomes a defeated, hollowed-out fortress where the cellular guards were simply evaporated from their posts weeks ago. This latent biological treachery guarantees that even if the frontline mud fails to kill you, the pristine, white sheets of the rear support hospitals certainly will. The brutal trench warfare of the First World War saw hundreds of thousands of young men suffer these exact anatomical nightmares. Their skin melted, their lungs dissolved into bloody foam, and their very DNA was physically corrupted by the towering arrogance of weaponized industrial chemistry. We look at the grainy, silent, black and white photographs of the blinded soldiers walking in a line at Ypres, their hands on each other's shoulders, and we tell ourselves that this is merely history. It is a horrific, closed chapter of human cruelty that we permanently locked away with the Geneva Protocol. We feel incredibly insulated by international law and modern morality. But that is the final, global head fake. The physiological reality of 1915 is sitting right outside our modern window. We haven't banned chemical weapons. We've simply refined them in highly classified laboratories. We've made them exponentially safer to store, much more complex for sensors to detect, and infinitely more efficient at targeting the human nervous system and vital organs. We live in an incredibly fragile age where the daily news cycle speaks casually of strategic escalation, red lines, and tactical chemical strikes. The mustard gas of 1915 hasn't vanished into the history books. Its chemical derivatives are still secretly manufactured. Its modern, synthesized cousins, like Novichok and sarin, travel quietly in innocuous perfume bottles and specialized artillery shells across sovereign borders to instantly liquefy the nervous systems of an entirely new generation of political victims and unfortunate soldiers. We look at the primitive canvas mask in the photograph and feel a sense of distant, arrogant pity for the men of the past. But under that thin layer of modern technological confidence, the industrial grinder has never stopped turning its heavy iron gears. We are all still just fragile biological containers, walking bags of water and tissue, waiting to be dismantled by the next great weaponized chemical reaction. The fundamental threat hasn't changed a single bit. We've just updated the color of the hazmat suits. Close your eyes right now. Take a deep breath. Feel the dampness in the air around you. That isn't just the weather changing. That is the lingering historical memory of the gas waiting quietly for the next deep breath. If the shadow of the yellow cross falls over your city tomorrow, and the authorities give you a brutal choice between the agonizing, weeks-long pain of the blister or the swift, toxic poison of a desperate, unproven cure, which terrifying path would you choose? Answer carefully. The history of dark medicine is written entirely in the impossible choices we are forced to make when the very air we breathe turns to acid. Make your physiological dilemma known in the comments below. The archivista is logging your answers, and the long glass-eyed beak of the mask is still packed heavily with the smell of garlic and rot. But weaponized chemistry wasn't only used to destroy armies in the mud of Europe. Just 10 years later, the richest, most powerful men in America willingly paid absolute fortunes to drink liquid radiation, truly believing it was a miraculous scientific cure-all, right up until their lower jaws completely rotted off their skulls. Click the video on your screen right now to enter the horrifying, glowing world of Radither, and I'll see you in the archives